still dream.
Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at this album here. It's a bit of a classic. It is Hounds of Love by Kate Bush. So yes, I'll just be doing the usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So this was Kate Bush's fifth album, released on the 16th of September in 1985. Now her last album was The Dreaming, which was an entirely self-recorded and self-produced album. However, that was a commercial and critical flop. On that record, she used a Fairlight emulator, which was a piece of equipment where she could effectively recreate like any sound that she wanted, like any instrument, and she wanted like to continue this style of working for this follow-up album. So she she retreated like from the public eye like for like a couple of years and built an entire studio like in a barn like on like her home estate. She began demoing the album in early 1984 and then worked up those demo recordings to make the final mixes for the album, and like getting different people in like to overdub like the tracks and like sort of tart them up like a little bit. The album is structured such that it's two very distinct sides. The first side has all the singles on it and like a more kind of standalone tracks, but they are all still kind of quite similar sort of sounds, quite so like I think musically they are very linked, like very much linked, like the 5 songs like on the first side, and then the second side is a suite of tracks entitled The Ninth Wave, which is a kind of conceptual suite about a woman kind of drifting away like at sea. Now upon its release, the critical reception was rather mixed like at the time. Sounds magazine called it dramatic, moving and beautifully romantic. However, Rolling Stone like in like America said that it both dazzles and boards. However, a year later like it was like included high like on like many like top albums like off like the year list, and it's sort of like nowadays revered like as an all-time classic. And commercially, it was a huge success as well. It was certainly Kate Bush's most successful album, her commercial peak. Like in the UK, it went double platinum, selling 600,000 copies. And by 1998, it had sold over 1 million copies worldwide. So what should I show you my vinyl copy of it here? There's nothing special about this one. It's just a reissue from I think 2018. They reissued I believe all of the Kate Bush albums, and yeah, this was the first one like I bought. Like I was sort of like like when we get to like the track like which like sort of made me buy this album, like I'll discuss it like a bit more there. But yeah, a nice like reissue of it. Not sure if this was the original label it was on or if it was on maybe EMI or something, but it's on a label called Fish People. But lovely like in the sleeves of it, just the lyrics there, and lovely photography as well. Okay, so I'll now go over each of the album songs in detail. So I will score each track out of 10 and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So the first track is called Running Up That Hill, which was the first single, and it is one of Kate Bush's biggest hits. It reached number 3 in the UK, and yeah, it's a great song this. The subject of the track is kind of about a man and a woman sort of swapping bodies, swapping roles, and sort of like enabling them to have a greater understanding like of each other, and it sort of describes like making like a deal with God like to like achieve this. And I just love the track, I just love the vibe of it. Like it's quite an eerie sounding song this. You've got this kind of brooding drumming going on and these different synth textures and different sort of vocal samples like what like she's kind of twisted like through like the emulator, and that's just really good. And like it's not a song which was instantly commercial, but it certainly I think struck a chord with people. Like it certainly was very distinctive like when like it came out like as a single, and like yeah, that was a big success. So yeah, Running Up That Hill, a fantastic song, and yeah, for me a 10 out of 10. Next track up is also fantastic. It's the title track, Hounds of Love, which begins with a sample from a horror film, The Night of the Demon, this sort of like panicky voice. It's a perfect start to the track which it's got strong use of cellos on it, gives the track a real sense of paranoia, along with sort of Bush's vocal on it, which is very dramatic, like in like its range, and then like the cellos acts like almost like as percussion like as well. They give the track a real sense like of a real sense of like momentum. Lyrically, it's about being afraid to fall in love, and it describes the lyrics of like the song about being chased like by like these like metaphorical hounds. And yeah, it is just a song which is just really great, and there's a lot of hooks to it as well. Like it's both catchy but like also very artistic. Like there's a lot of substance to this song as well, and it was quite a successful single, reached number 80 like on like the charts. So not as successful like as Running Up the Hill, but still a great song. And yeah, for me, a 10 out of 10.
It's changing in the big sky. No, we're looking at the
Next one is called Big Sky, which is an upbeat track, and I love this song like ever since I heard it. Like I first played this album through, and it just really struck me, this song. I love the production on it, especially. Like it's kind of got a wall of sound sort of production style on it, a lot of drums on it, which sort of like keep growing, and then you've got like these kind of like frantic hand claps coming like towards the end, and you could just really feel like the band's like enjoying themselves playing this song. Once again, this was a single, and a slightly less successful one. I only reached number 37, but I think the track is majestic, and it should have been a bigger hit. And yeah, kind of like the lyrical subject of it is sort of like about reminiscing about like your childhood, sort of like taking pleasure like from childhood memories of kind of like looking at like the clouds and like how like their shapes change and that. So it's not the most heavy song like on the album. Like it's certainly like there's many more darker songs. This is certainly the most upbeat, the most like sort of pop driven moment like on the album. But I think it's fantastic, and yeah, for me, would get a 10 out of 10. But then we cool things down a little bit with the next song, Mother Stands for Comfort, which is a much slower track, a much darker track, and it's lyrically about a mother of a murderer, basically, and how she's still kind of there like for like a son. Like she sings on it like she knows that I've been doing something wrong, but she won't say anything. She thinks that I was with my friends, but she won't mind me lying and that. So it's got this kind of, it kind of as like the song goes on, it's kind of got a sort of creepy like undertones of kind of this sort of psychological thing, like sort of like this mother, like she knows like her son's doing awful things, like but she's still his mum like at like the end of the day and that. And then it's kind of, yeah, the music really marries that well with this sort of like unsettling glass breaking sound effects, and then you've got a German bass player, Uberhard Weber, I believe his name is. He plays some great fretless bass work, which again really serves the track very well. Now, it was the only song on the first side not released as a single, and it's certainly not a commercial song. I can understand why this was never a single on that, and it's not one of my favourites like on the album, but it's a song which is growing on me. I think, you know, it's a song which takes a couple of listens to really appreciate, but I would still give it an 8 out of 10 though.
but every time it rains,
Okay, and then we get Cloudbusting closes off the first side, and it was this song which I heard. It happened to be like on the radio, and it just really struck me. I thought like kind of like the strings in it were quite Beatlesque, and that, you know, it's very cello driven, this song here. And then I just loved again Bush's vocal on it, and the kind of like the way the track builds up as well. Kind of starts off very minimalistic, but then by the end you've got this kind of big choir on it as well. It's just, yeah, it's just the way all these songs, like they all build up to something like really fantastic. And it's got quite an interesting lyrical backstory. It tells the story of Wilhelm Rieck, who was I believe an Austrian sort of like psychologist. Like he invented a machine called a cloudbuster which could create rain, and it's kind of, the song is told from the perspective of his young son Peter, and how like Peter like would like wish to follow in like his father's footsteps. His father was I think eventually arrested like by like the government or something like that, like so it's kind of about like this child like wanting to continue like his father's work, but also like protect like his father like as well. And I think, yeah, it's a really moving song, both in like the lyrics and Bush's delivery of this, but also the musical arrangement as well. Like I believe at the cello, like it's a combination of a real cello and a Fairlight, and like again like the Fairlight synthesizer works really well, sounds absolutely fantastic. And again, this was a single, this was the second single, and it only reached number 20 in the charts. I mean, it's not a bad performance there, but I think there should have been a bigger hit, and it was what made me want to investigate this album, and like really, yeah, Kate Bush, like more like in general, further. So yeah, Cloudbusting, yeah, amazing song for me, a 10 out of 10.
Tune into some friendly voices.
Next track on the album is called And Dream of Sheep, which starts off the second side and the ninth wave side of the album. And this, it's basically on this track you've got the narrator of this piece sort of drifting away to sleep while stranded in the middle of the sea. And it's such a heartbreaking sounding song. It's really just Kate and the piano, very minimalistic, this one. And I think it's aged particularly well. Like, you know, you get like a lot of kind of female singers these days sort of going for that very sort of mellow sort of feel and sort of very stripped back kind of feel. Like I could really imagine someone, say like Billie Eilish, doing like a cover like of this song here. Of course it won't be like as good as this, but it's got that sort of vibe to it. And again, vulnerable kind of lyrics on it. She sings on it, "Let me be weak, let me sleep and dream of sheep." And yeah, I just think it's a really, really great song. Like when you get into it, and yeah, for me, we'll get a 10 out of 10. Next one up is called Under Ice, which is a dramatic song. This, you've kind of got like, again, the cellos are back on this one, you've got these intense backing vocals on it, and you can kind of tell like at this point trouble is brewing like in like the narrative, like off like the second side, kind of like the characters sort of fallen asleep and they're kind of like about to start sort of drowning like away. I mean, it's a perfect mood setter thing. It's not much of a song, this, you know, there's not much in terms of lyrics or sort of like it's only maybe about 2 minutes tops, this track, but it's a good mood setter, and it's certainly like its place like on like the second side certainly makes sense. So yeah, Under Ice for me would get a 9 out of 10. Next up is called Waking the Witch, which I believe is the longest track on the second side. Again, it's one of these things that's like trying to sort of like, I mean, like I'll probably get like a load of comments sort of saying that you can't really like sort of separate like these songs like on like the second side, and I suppose there is some truth in that, but they are separate songs technically, so I will sort of score them separately. But anyway, yeah, Waking the Witch, I think it's the longest piece like on the second side here, and it kind of begins, it's almost in two parts. This begins with mostly kind of spoken word montage of kind of different people. I think there's some samples from films and whatnot in there, kind of telling like this character like to wake up and that, and then kind of suddenly it goes into like a different gear altogether, different backwards tape loops. You've got this kind of scary vocal clippings coming into the track, gives it a real sense like of claustrophobia. It is very unmelodic, this song here, and it's a almost scary song, this kind of thing. You kind of sort of listen to it thinking, what is this? But it's I think it works like on the album, and I think the mood it's trying to convey, like more than anything, like it does that like quite effectively. So yeah, Waking the Witch for me will be a 9 out of 10.
But I'm not here.
Next up is called Watching You Without Me, and in this song, at this point, like in like the character's dream, she's sort of like a spirit's left her body and she's visited like a former lover and that. So like again, by this point, I think you can kind of assume maybe the character's died or she's dying, and it's quite a heavy emotional song, this one here. She sings in it like you can't feel me here in this room with you now, you can't hear what I'm saying. And it's got this kind of low-key sort of like electronic kind of music bed on this one here. Again, it sounds very ahead of its time. It's certainly not aged at all, this song, I think. And yeah, it's kind of like serves like as the perfect backing for the song. So yeah, Watching You Without Me, a really nice track there. We'll get a 9 out of 10.
Never say goodbye to my part of your life.
And then we get a song, Jig of Life, which for me is maybe my least favourite song on the album. I know it is part of this larger conceptual piece, but I just don't really get this song. I think it certainly adds to the variety and the almost kind of schizophrenic feeling of the second side, of kind of jumping between musical styles, different tempos, different textures and that. This one is a very heavy kind of Celtic sounding song. You've got these kind of fiddles and this sort of like Highland dancing kind of like thing like going on with it. But I do think like the main part like of the song like is good, where she's kind of singing, but then it does go on a little bit too long. Again, it kind of, there's a large instrumental section section, and I think it kind of the Irish sort of like folkiness of it kind of removes the kind of emotional punch like off like some of like the other songs surrounding it. You know, this is kind of like, it's a bit, I don't say it's a bit too upbeat and that, but it's a song which I think I maybe need, it's a song I think which doesn't quite make sense to me yet, and it might do like with a few more listens of that, but I have listened to this album a fair few times, you know, like has to be said, and I'm still not huge on this song, so I would still give it a 7 out of 10. It's not awful, it's not bad, it's just for me, compared to the other tracks on here, for me, just not quite up there.
I get out of my car, step into the night.
So then after that little diversion with the Jig of Life, we get a return to the more kind of somber, more mellow mood with Hello Earth, which is, it's kind of sang from the perspective of someone who's kind of viewing the planet Earth like from like a distance, and she sings with it, like I love like kind of like the line in it, like I get out of my car, step into the night and look up at the sky, and there's something bright. The way she sings that, and then again the melody just flows, it's just beautiful songwriting, she sings it amazingly, and for me it is faultless, so I would give that one a 10 out of 10. And then the closing track is called The Morning Fog, and I get a real sense of relief with this song here. You've kind of got this sort of sound effects like of birds chirping in there, but also this very brightly sort of piano texture like on it as well, and the kind of like the character like is sort of like being rescued as well, and we can now sort of like look into the future, and like in some ways I think it functions as like the end credits to the album like as well, like, you know, it's sort of like, it's like the story's ended like on like a happy note kind of thing. Again, you've got some great fretless bass playing work and some nice like acoustic guitar touches as well, and I think it's a perfect closer to the album. I think it rounds off everything, like not just the ninth wave, but certainly the first side as well, just rounds things off really well. So yeah, for me, The Morning Fog would get a 10 out of 10 too. Okay, so that's been my review of the Hounds of Love. So overall, it would score 93%, which is an incredible score. Very rarely do albums like which like I like review score more than 90%, but this I think is a worthy one. It was a radical album, I think, like for like Kate Bush. Although yeah, the dreaming was experimental as well. I think this one, she kind of marries the two styles together very well. The kind of the experimental, but also the commercial as well. And like, yeah, I think it's like the two sides just work together so well. You've got the singles from the first side, all of which are incredible, and then the more progressive, the more kind of theatrical, and usually like I wouldn't go for that like on like generally speaking, like I'm not a massive fan like of prog rock and kind of these sort of like album long stories and that, you know, but I think it's just a combination of the production on this one, Kate's delivery like on it, and kind of no section goes on too long either like on the second side, maybe with the exception like of like Jig of Life, but like anyway, I think it's still a great piece of music, like that whole ninth wave segment. So yeah, that's been my review of Kate Bush's Hounds of Love here. So yeah, I think it is, yeah, as I said, a timeless sounding album, one which hasn't dated at all, and I think it's just chock full of fantastic songs and like just great art like as well. So I hope you have enjoyed my review, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.
Like a storm, being born again.